If there was one photographer who was way ahead of his time, it was probably Saul Leiter. He photographed in color at a time when there was no alternative to black and white for any photographer who wanted to call himself an artist. In his early black and white photographs from the 40s and 50s, however, you could already see his preference for silhouettes, reflections and unusual frames in his street photography, which also set him apart from other photographers early on. From 1957 he switched almost completely to color film. In that time, color was for family photos from the last vacation in Sardinia, if at all, and it was for Saul Leiter at the end of the 50s. But apart from his courage to use color, what makes Saul Leiter's photography so special today, and how can his approach change our way to see the world in front of our camera in a different way? With focal length, it's still the same today as it was back in the 50s with color versus black and white. Anyone who wants to call themselves a street photographer uses 28 or 35 millimeters. All others are amateurs or compulsively want to step out of line. But when you start shooting on the street with a telephoto lens, I'm here with an effective 75 millimeters on my Fuji X-T4, everything changes. Although the 75mm is only slightly in the telephoto range, I have the feeling that a whole new world opens up to me in street photography. Where before with wide-angle lenses you tended to look at the big picture, now the world of details opens up. In Saul Leiter's case, these were mainly views through windows and frames he found on the streets, often enriched with strong, vibrant colors. Especially with reflections in shop windows, you would have to crop a lot at 28mm to emphasize the most exciting part of the photo. But this is not necessary with a telephoto lens. I really feel that when I use a telephoto lens, even when I no longer have a camera in my hands, I am much more attentive to details and little things in my surroundings. When Saul Leiter had the choice of photographing people directly or through a piece of glass, an open window or a shop window, he always chose the version with the frame. Frames and indirect photos via reflections give a photo a certain mystery and an alienating effect. With a telephoto lens you can also search for such frames much better because they are often hidden deep in the reflections of shop windows, for example. And no matter how close you get to the window with your camera, the reflection you want to focus on is often still too minimally visible with a wide-angle lens. With a telephoto lens on the other side, just a tiny bit of camera movement to the right or left is often enough to completely change the perspective and the frame of the people passing by. But pillars, trees or walls also offer fantastic frames for street photography, with which you can experiment endlessly until you get the result you like. I use the fishing technique here and simply wait with my chosen composition until someone walks through my picture. Unfortunately, I have to wait much longer for men in hats today than I would have had to in Saul Leiter's day. Oh, and the beautiful cars of the 50s and 60s. Let's better not talk about all that loss of beauty. Saul Leiter sometimes worked with a very shallow depth of field in order to achieve the aforementioned effect of mystery in a photo. If you shoot f1.2 or f1.4, certain parts of an image simply become blurred colors. This often makes photos look more like paintings. And by the way, Saul Leiter was also a painter his whole life. What you can learn from Saul Leiter is definitely that not everything in a photo has to be in focus. Just allow for larger areas to be out of focus. This also makes the photos more interesting for later viewers and allows them to make their own interpretations about the blurred areas of your photos. Saul Leiter never set out in search of certain photos. Instead, he went on long walks with his camera and tried to capture everything in his surroundings. First with his senses and then with his camera. And suddenly there was an image he had never thought of before, and there was a new kind of composition he had never seen from any other photographer. If you search too obsessively for images, for example those you've seen on Instagram or in exhibitions by well-known photographers, then you might miss out on motifs that are new, previously undiscovered, and have more to do with you than with any role models the rest of the photography world might admire. My advice to you is to simply pack your camera, take a long walk through your city, and then you will notice when a photo is suddenly in front of you. Rely more on your gut than on your intellect. With his subjective approach to photography, Saul Leiter opposed the documentary style that often prevailed at that time. He didn't want to photograph the big picture in a long shot, he wanted to get out the details that would probably have remained hidden to most people without his photography. He deliberately cropped photos around certain details to give them a different meaning. He concentrated on certain details that he found exciting in order to tell his perspective of the story. We are humans and not machines. Our point of view can only ever be subjective. The choice of camera, lens, or the big question of black and white or color alone contribute to the fact that photos are subject to the subjective perception of each photographer. Why shouldn't you take this further? In your photography, concentrate on sections of your surroundings that catch your eye. Because that's often the case. Many small details then add up to the big picture we are aiming for. Thank you, Saul Leiter.